History isn't just a record of the past. It's a massive, multi-millennial game of telephone. We grow up memorizing names like Pythagoras, King Arthur, and Sun Tzu as if they were solid facts carved into the bedrock of reality. We see their faces in textbooks and hear their quotes in graduation speeches, but when you actually peel back the layers of the archival onion, you realize that some of these titans of history have less physical evidence for their existence than a holiday mascot. We are talking about philosophers who served as branding for ancient math cults, national heroes literally copy-pasted from Viking folklore, and corporate icons that managed to fool an entire century into sending them marriage proposals. These are 10 legendary figures from your history books who likely never took a single breath. Number 1. Betty Crocker, the First Lady of Flour. Betty Crocker is arguably the most successful imaginary woman in American history. For over 100 years, people have treated her like a living legend. At the height of her popularity, the Washburn-Crosby Company was receiving hundreds of heartfelt fan letters addressed to her every single day. Some men actually sent her formal marriage proposals, while thousands of women asked for her cooking advice as if she were a trusted, wise sister. The reality is that Betty was born in a boardroom, not a kitchen. In 1921, the company, which eventually became General Mills, needed a friendly, approachable female name to sign off on responses to customer inquiries. They held a contest among their female employees to find the most authentic-sounding signature for this fictional persona. The surname Crocker was borrowed from a recently retired company director, and Betty was chosen simply because it sounded wholesome and relatable. Her iconic portrait has been updated 8 times since its debut to keep her looking modern and on-brand. She is the ultimate proof that an emotional bond doesn't require a heartbeat, it just requires a good logo and a consistent signature. Number 2. Pythagoras, the mascot of the bean-hating cult. The man responsible for the triangle theorem that haunted your middle school dreams might be a total fabrication, or at least he wasn't the man you think he was. According to legend, Pythagoras founded a secretive religious math cult in ancient Greece that worshipped numbers, believed in the transmigration of souls, and had a bizarre, violent hatred of beans. Seriously, they believed beans contained the souls of the dead and refused to touch them. The problem for historians is that Pythagoras himself left behind exactly 0 original writings. Everything we know about him comes from his followers, the Pythagoreans, who wrote centuries after he allegedly died. Most modern scholars suspect that the cult simply invented a legendary founder to give their mathematical religion a sense of ancient authority. Even the famous theorem a squared plus b squared equals c squared wasn't his. The Babylonians were using that math a full 1,000 years before he was even born. You didn't spend your teenage years cursing a genius, you were cursing a branding exercise for a bean-fearing math cult. Number 3. King Arthur, the medieval cinematic universe. King Arthur is the ultimate British legend. The Round Table, the Sword and the Stone, the mystical city of Camelot, it all feels so real that people have spent centuries digging through the mud of Glastonbury and Tintagel searching for his castle. But if you look at the contemporary records from the 5th and 6th centuries, the time Arthur supposedly reigned, you will find absolutely nothing. No mention of his name, no record of his battles, and no trace of his kingdom. The earliest references to Arthur appear in Welsh poems and histories written hundreds of years after his alleged life. Most modern scholars suspect that Arthur is a composite figure, a Frankenstein's monster of several minor warlords and Roman British leaders who fought against the Saxons. His legend grew with every retelling. Lancelot was a 12th century French invention, Merlin was pulled from separate Welsh mythology, and the Round Table was a later addition to the lore. Arthur is essentially the first successful franchise, a medieval cinematic universe built by different writers over half a millennium. Number 4. Mulan, the Ballad of a Ghost. Disney made a fortune off her story, and she has become a global symbol of female strength and filial piety. However, Hua Mulan almost certainly never existed.
Her entire history originates from a single Chinese poem called the Ballad of Mulan, likely written in the 5th or 6th century. It's a beautiful piece of literature about a girl who disguises herself as a man to take her elderly father's place in the Northern Wei army. But as far as the historical record is concerned, she is a ghost. The Chinese Imperial Archives were legendary for their meticulous documentation. They recorded tax disputes, minor border skirmishes, and the names of thousands of low-ranking officials, yet they contain zero mention of a woman serving in the military for 12 years and rising to prominence. No military records, no family genealogy, and no contemporary sightings exist. Mulan belongs in the same category as Cinderella or Robin Hood, a folk heroine whose story was so deeply resonant that people collectively decided she must be real to make the world more interesting. Number 5. Sun Tzu, The Committee of War. The Art of War is a book that every business bro and self-help guru loves to quote at length. "All warfare is deception, and know your enemy," are iconic lines attributed to the legendary general Sun Tzu. Traditional history places him as a strategist serving the king of Wu around 500 BC. The problem is that contemporary records from that specific period make no mention of him. Many modern historians now believe that Sun Tzu is not a single man, but a best-of compilation. The Art of War was likely a collection of strategic wisdom from multiple Chinese generals, refined and assembled over several generations. The name Sun Tzu, meaning Master Sun, was likely attached to the text later to give the collection the weight of a single infallible genius. Every time a CEO quotes him in a boardroom meeting, they're not quoting a military mastermind, they're quoting a committee of ancient military thinkers whose names have been lost to time.
Number 6. Jack the Ripper, the press's best-selling villain. Jack the Ripper terrorized London in 1888 and became the world's first celebrity serial killer. While the horrific murders in Whitechapel were undeniably real, Jack himself was almost certainly a media invention. The iconic name came from a letter sent to a news agency, signed Jack the Ripper, which the police at the time strongly suspected was written by a journalist looking to keep the story on the front pages. In the late 1800s, Victoria newspapers were locked in a brutal circulation war. Nothing sold copies like a mysterious, supernatural-feeling villain with a catchy name. By branding the killer, the press transformed a series of tragic, localized crimes into a worldwide phenomenon. The truth is likely far more mundane. The murders were probably committed by one or several local men who lacked the cinematic flair the press gave them. Jack the Ripper was the first true crime clickbait, a brand designed to terrify and entertain a public hungry for sensation. Number 7. Saint Christopher, the patron of the optional. If you've ever traveled, you've likely seen a Saint Christopher medal dangling from a rear-view mirror or worn as a necklace. He is the patron saint of travelers, famously depicted as a giant who carried the Christ child across a dangerous river. Some ancient traditions even depicted him with the head of a dog, claiming he came from a tribe of cynocephali, or dog-headed people. Over the centuries, the Catholic Church grew increasingly uncomfortable with the total lack of historical evidence for Christopher. In 1969, the Vatican quietly removed him from the general Roman calendar. This was the Church's polite way of saying, "We're pretty sure this guy didn't exist." He wasn't officially canceled, but he was demoted to optional veneration. It is a fascinating commentary on the power of tradition. Millions of people still rely on the protection of a saint that the Church itself is no longer confident ever walked the earth. Number 8. Tokyo Rose, the manufactured traitor. During World War II, American GIs in the Pacific were haunted by the voice of Tokyo Rose. She was the seductive enemy broadcaster who played American music and then told the soldiers that their wives were cheating on them at home. The GIs assumed Tokyo Rose was a single, sultry-voiced woman. In reality, she was a collective fiction. Tokyo Rose was actually at least a dozen different English-speaking women who worked for Radio Tokyo. After the war ended, the U.S. government was under immense public pressure to find and punish a villain.
They pinned the entire identity of Tokyo Rose on one woman, Iva Toguri, an American citizen who had been stranded in Japan. Despite flimsy evidence, she was convicted of treason and served 6 years in prison. It took decades for the truth to come out. Witnesses eventually admitted they were pressured by the FBI to lie. She was finally pardoned in 1977. Tokyo Rose was a group identity turned into a single woman's nightmare because a single enemy is easier to prosecute than a complicated truth. Number 9. Homer, the brand name of Western literature. Homer is credited with creating the very foundation of Western literature, the Iliad and the Odyssey. The classic image is of a blind, wandering poet reciting these massive epics from memory. This is a beautiful image, but scholars have debated the Homeric question for centuries. Most modern academics believe that the poems were not written by one person, but were the result of a long oral tradition. They show signs of being compiled over generations by various poets, with different sections having vastly different linguistic styles. Homer was likely a brand name, a collective identity for a guild of oral storytellers who refined these tales over 200 years. Much like Sun Tzu or Pythagoras, ancient audiences preferred a single genius author over a messy committee of anonymous poets. The blind poet is likely just a mask for an entire culture storytelling tradition. Number 10. Pope Joan, the Church's most scandalous ghost. According to a legend that persisted for centuries, a woman disguised herself as a man in the 9th century, rose through the ranks of the Catholic Church, and was eventually elected pope. Her secret was only revealed when she reportedly gave birth during a papal procession through the streets of Rome. The Catholic Church has always denied that Pope Joan existed, dismissing the story as medieval satire or Protestant propaganda. They are probably right. The papal records from that era are quite thorough and leave no room for a Joan in the timeline. However, the legend was so powerful that for centuries many Catholics believed it was true. Some historical accounts even claimed the Church created a special chair with a hole in the seat to verify the gender of future popes. While the chair existed, its purpose was likely ceremonial, but the fact that the legend survived so long shows how much the public loved a good scandal, even a fictional one. History is often less about what actually happened and more about the stories we choose to believe. Whether it's a corporate mascot selling cake mix or a mythical king defining a nation's soul, these 10 figures prove that you don't need a birth certificate to be immortal. Sometimes a well-told lie is more powerful than a boring truth. Which of these historical ghosts surprised you the most? Do you think any of them might actually be based on a real person we just haven't found yet? Let us know in the comments. And if you're planning on becoming a historical legend yourself, maybe start by inventing a cool name and a mysterious backstory. It worked for Homer.